Good morning to everybody. How you doing? Hope all's well. Keep up the beautiful work. Bezrat Hashem Yitbarach B'Tromam. We should have Besorot Tovot. Today is Monday, Parashat Hukat. Just like we do things, Bezrat Hashem, that just because Hashem said so. He also said there's going to be a Bet HaMikdash. He also said Mashiach's going to come. He also said those who we love, we're going to see them again, Bezrat Hashem. So just like that, he does it when no matter what. He's going to bring all good things and show us good things, and we should have Besorot Tovot, Bezrat Hashem, Yitbarach. Today's class is Refuah shelemah l'chol Am Yisrael, for the hostages to come home, the soldiers to come home, and all of us to come home to Yerushalayim Habnuya. We were learning the laws of pickling vegetables, etc. on Shabbat. We said you're not allowed to salt too many vegetables in one shot unless you're throwing, and that's a lot of salt. If it's a little salt, heck it, just to eat, you're allowed to. But if it's a lot of salt, even though the items are raw, and even though you plan to eat them on that day, you're still not allowed to, because our rabbis came along and said it's similar to cooking, therefore you're not allowed to. We did mention that, let's say a person buys pickles. In the old days, everyone made pickles, and Baruch Hashem, today we still have women that make the pickles. But in Wisconsin, very far away, you have ladies that have to buy it. Even salt water, they buy in pomegranate, and they might buy a jar of pickles for about $20. The liffit and the pickled peppers, etc., the turnips, and all of the above, and the olives. So it might not cost that much, but the parking ticket for parking by a pump in order to get it, that was a little costly. Could you take that off of the expenses of Shabbat? Ask your local rabbi. But if a person has pickles in the jar and they're not fully pickled, are you allowed to return them to the jar on Shabbat itself? Because that's like pickling. And the answer is, if you're doing it for that day, the rabbi says you're allowed to, believe it or not, even though they're not fully pickled. But if you're doing it for the weekday, yani for after Shabbat, that the rabbi says it's better to be strict in that situation. Also, making salt water. We just spoke about salt water, $9 in pomegranate for Pesach time. That's in the pomegranate, Wisconsin, of course. Are you allowed to make salt water on Shabbat or on the holiday? Well, holiday is different because you're really allowed to cook. So if the holiday falls out on Shabbat or Saturday night, the seder you want to prepare, etc. We'll talk about that another time, preparing from the holiday to the next day or Shabbat to the holiday. But for now, are you allowed to make salt water on Shabbat? And the answer is, the rabbi says, if you're doing it for that meal, then yes. But if you're doing a huge amount for the whole Shabbat, for Seudah Shlishit, and you're doing it in the morning, that it should be for all the meals, then you're not really allowed to. So if you're doing it right before the Seder, of course you're allowed to. I don't think there are people that have salt water nowadays on a regular Shabbat to eat with their radishes, but if you do, then you're not allowed to make a lot in one set for a lot for the whole day, Bezrat Hashem. Also, are you allowed to put sugar on strawberries? Nowadays, people don't really do that. Of course, we know strawberries is a little of a big, not a little, a big of a bug problem. So you have to follow the halachot, what our rabbis tell us to do regarding the strawberries. But besides that, are you allowed to put sugar on them? Nowadays, Baruch Hashem, everyone is health conscious. There's no, they don't really eat sugar like they used to do in the old days. In the 80s, they would take a half of a grapefruit, throw sugar on it, and eat it. There are some sects of people that might take salt and put it on watermelon and eat it, each to their own. Can you put sugar on fruit and leave it there, and you do a lot in one shot? We said cucumbers, if you want to put a lot of salt and you want to leave it a lot without putting anything else on it. We said for the meal, you're not really allowed to do that. You can only do one or two, but more than that, you're not allowed to do. What about sugar? And the halacha is, the rabbis never said sugar is a problem, even though it looks like the salting, but still it's not connected. And we only said all of this is prohibited from the Chachamim, from the Torah, you're allowed to do it because it's not really like cooking. It's similar to cooking, but it's not really cooking, and therefore it's only from the Chachamim. So therefore, sugar that's similar to salt is a little too far from the original cooking, and therefore you are allowed to put sugar on your item on Shabbat. Can you? Sometimes somebody might buy vegetables, and the vegetables are getting a little withered from the summer, from the fridge, etc. What if it's there too long? Are you allowed to soak it in water to give it to make it more fresh and to make it more stuff to last longer? The law is you are allowed to. You are allowed to, even technically, if you're doing it for that they last for after Shabbat, you're still allowed to. Of course, we don't say something that we're going to do it for after Shabbat, but you right now you want to fix those veggies. You don't want to have to throw them out. We don't like to throw out food at all. Even they have these organizations, Baruch Hashem, that we should have many parties in Am Yisrael, but after a wedding, after an engagement party, Shirbu Simachot, or whatever party it is, there's a lot of food left over. There's cakes, cookies, etc. And if obviously we don't like to throw anything out, so there are organizations, they give it to yeshivot, they give it to those who are in need. And Baruch Hashem, it's a beautiful thing that we don't waste food. Hashem gives us a gift. He gives us food, and we, of course, know we have to appreciate it and not just throw it out. So yes, you can salvage the vegetables by putting it in water on Shabbat. The next milacha that the rabbi gets into is gozez, shearing, cutting wool from an animal. What's the law with that? Why would they used to do it? They used to make materials in the Mishkan, and of course, we know anything that they did in the Mishkan, you're not allowed to do on Shabbat. So they used to shear either wool or hair from an animal. When I was a kid in the 80s as well, camel wool sports jacket was very, very in. It was the cool thing. I don't know if they have them nowadays, but that was the shtick of back then. But you're not allowed to shear any hair or even feathers from a chicken on a bird on Shabbat, from a bird, from a chicken, or any wool, etc. What if the animal passed away? What if the animal's dead already? Are you allowed to? And you're still not allowed to. It's prohibited from the Torah to remove any hair, any wool from a live animal, from a dead animal. What if the skin was already pulled off the animal? Are you allowed to take hair off of that? And the answer is absolutely not. You are not allowed to do that on Shabbat. So now some people are thinking, well, who does that? Well, sometimes it does happen to be that we might be in this situation. They started selling korachas made out of fur. Let's say someone has a fur koracha and whatever, he's pulling some hairs out. He might not like the color or something. You're not allowed to pull it out on Shabbat. What is the measurement of the item? Everything we're saying so far in the melachot of Shabbat has an amount that makes it prohibited from the Torah. Over here, it's not a food, so it's not the size of a fig. What's the law? And the law is if someone shears off enough hair or enough wool, and they could spin a string out of it that would be 4 tefachim long, then you're not allowed. That would be prohibited from the Torah. But if someone will just pluck off less than that, we mentioned last week that there's a rule, Hatzi Shi'ur Asur Midrabanan, when it comes to Melechet Shabbat. We know in the Torah, something that you're not allowed to eat, let's say, in order to get lashes or punishment, a person has to eat a kizayit, an ounce or more. What's the law when it comes to eating less than that? Could someone, he decides to take a Swedish fish that might not be kosher? In the old days, they were kosher. There was an eruv, etc. But someone wants to eat a small amount, which is less than an ounce. Are you allowed to? And the answer is less than a kezayit is what we call hatzi shiur. Hatzi shiur asur min Torah, but that's when it comes to eating and certain sins. But when it comes to melechot Shabbat, if it's less than the shiur, it's not asur min Torah, it's asur midrabanan, which is also a serious thing. And therefore, if a person wants to just pluck out whatever it might be, a feather from his bird that he might have, or a dog, you want to pull out some hairs if they're too long from his body, or to give him a little grooming on Shabbat, you're not allowed to. And of course, we know animals are mukseh in itself. If someone does have a small dog in the house, or a hamster, or iguana, or whatever it might be, you're not allowed to pick it up and carry it on Shabbat. If someone has a dog, you're allowed to walk the dog, even have the leash, and sort of pull it towards you in a place where with an eruv, and that you're allowed to do. But to actual carry it, you're not allowed to. And for the germaphobes out there, there are some people that might carry their dog under their hand, and then they with their right hand, and then they stick out their hand. They'll switch the dog. How you doing, Rabbi? And the rabbi says, I don't want you to catch my cold. How you doing? But there's no carrying animals on Shabbat. Our rabbis made a decree. Is someone allowed to clean a fur garment on Shabbat? Let's say you watch The Honeymooners, you want to get yourself one of those raccoon hats and shake the tail every once in a while, and now it got dirty. Are you allowed to wash it off? Someone might say to themselves, it shouldn't be allowed, because if you wash it off, it's a problem of pulling out. You might pull out a few hairs, which is prohibited from the Torah. The answer is it's only prohibited from the Torah if you plan to pull out enough to make that string, which is 4 tefachim long. So that's pretty long item. It's about every tefach is about 3.14 inches. So you would need at least, if we said 4 tefahim, at least 12 inches, a foot long. So if you're not going to do that much, it's midrabanan, and therefore you're not really paying attention to pulling out the hairs. So if you do have your chinchilla item from and Tanovich, and you want to clean it off on Shabbat, you are allowed to. And like we said, there are other fur things that we have. Some people own chairs that might be from a pony. You have fur on the chair, so now could you scrub it off? And like we said, it's prohibited from the Torah, even if the animal is dead and even if the skin was pulled off, if you're doing it intentionally and long enough to make a string, like we said, 4 tefahim. So it's something you should take into consideration. But we did say you're allowed to clean it because you're not paying attention, and it's asur midrabanan. We also said feathers are prohibited on Shabbat. What's the law? If you got yourself a yeshivish piece of chicken, right? Sometimes they call chicken with a lot of feathers in it, they call it omer chicken, because in the omer you're not allowed to shave, and they still got the feathers on the chicken. Are you allowed to, when you have your chicken in your plate, are you allowed to pluck out the chickens? And the answer is, survey says, we did say it's prohibited from the Torah to pull out feathers from a bird, even when the chicken is dead, or even if it's just the skin. The answer is you are allowed to. However, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, only if it's cooked. If it's raw chicken, you're not allowed to. When it becomes cooked, the pores open up, and when you pull out the feathers, it's not really like pulling it out, plucking out feathers from before it was cooked. So since it's halfway out anyway, our rabbis allow it, but that's only if you're going to eat it right away, the item. Like we always say, there are many things that you're allowed to do, but only if you're going to eat it right away in that seudah, and therefore you are allowed to pull out. So if you're eating your turkey leg in Disney World, of course, no one will go there on Shabbat. But if someone is eating a turkey leg and there are feathers in it, you are allowed to pull it out. And I don't know if people might see fur or hair from an animal, a leg or something, if they're eating it. But if they are, you are allowed to pull it out as well, only after it is cooked. However, before it was cooked, it is not allowed on Shabbat. It's also the way of eating. It's like peeling off a banana peel or something of the like, and therefore you are allowed to. Um, Pulling hair out from a human being is also prohibited from the Torah, believe it or not. So sometimes people, if they didn't shave before Shabbat or something, they might have a hair coming out of their cheek or something that's not part of the beard. Are you allowed to just pluck it out on Shabbat? And the answer is pay attention. Number one, it's not from the Chachamim not to pull out hair. It's from the Torah. It's what we call a tolda of gozez. A tolda is asur min Torah, just like the av melacha. We have the av melacha, and then what's derived out of the melacha, a tree and its branches, and that's prohibited from the Torah as well. So a person has to be extra careful when it comes to those things. With a utensil is prohibited from the Torah. So if someone wants to take a tweezers and pluck out a hair on Shabbat, now if it's one hair, it's midrabanan, but if it's more than one hair, then it's from the Torah. So a person has to be very careful with that. Also, if a person pulls out with their hand, it's not prohibited, it's not from the Torah, but it is prohibited from the Chachamim. And therefore, even like we said, someone might have a hair sticking out of middle of nowhere or something, and they want to pluck it out. You're not allowed to, even with your fingers on Shabbat. It's prohibited from the Chachamim, but not from the Torah. Because of this halacha, our rabbis tell us there you have to be very careful how to brush hair on Shabbat. It's a serious thing as well. You know, it's brought down in the halacha that if you have a soft brush with hair from a pig, then it is allowed. And I'm like, who has a brush made out of that? And the other day it happened to be I was on Birkat Amazon and I was looking for a brush, and then you see boar hair brushes, so they still have that even nowadays, believe it or not. So if the brush is soft, you're allowed to, where you know you're not going to pull out any hair on Shabbat. There are some rabbis that allow if it's wet. If your hair is wet, then we're not afraid that the when you pull out the when you brush your hair, it's going to come out. So ask your local rabbi when it comes to items like that. And if a person always gels up all the time, ask your local rabbi for specifics. You could DM or PM your local rabbi for $29.99 plus tax. But it is something that a person has to be careful. A person is allowed to wash their face. And if someone does take a shower, that's permissible on Shabbat. You have to be careful how you scrub your hair as well. If you're trying to wash that gray right out of your hair, you have to be careful from the how you scrub. You can't scrub regular scrubbing style. You got to just maybe put shampoo on it and tap it on and then wash it out, because there are a lot of specifics. Because we did say you're allowed it's prohibited from the Torah to pull out hair, so therefore you have to be extremely careful. Can someone remove a band-aid on Shabbat if necessary? And the answer is yes, do it in one shot, but only if it's necessary. If it's not necessary, the rabbi tells us better to wait on Shabbat. But of course, if someone we don't know anyone who would take a haircut or shave on Shabbat but of course that's 1,000% asur. Even if someone wants to use maybe nair or something on their beard, there are creams that you could put on your face and take out. Though we used to use it many years ago when in yeshiva, it was the closest shave anyone could get if you're careful, right? So, but are you allowed to? And of course, yeah, you're not allowed to do it on Shabbat, whether it be a man or a woman. All these things are prohibited on Shabbat. We'll stop here for today. I hope everyone has the greatest day. Keep up the excellent work. We should have Besorot Tovot, Yeshuot V'Nahamot to be continued tomorrow with good health. Have the greatest day. Much success. Good things always. Take care. Bye.